it leads to us, when it doesn't work for us, it leads to us feeling shame. It leads to us feeling like we are not doing enough and feeling guilty around something that we should feel immense amount of pleasure, food. I mean, throughout human history, food has been a source of celebration for us. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Flow Over Fear podcast, where it is our mission to help you to rise above fear and realize your ultimate potential in leadership and life. I'm your host, Adam Hill, and it is my goal to share with you the human side of high performance. My guests share their experience with fear, anxiety, struggle, challenge, and most importantly, despite all of it, how they rose above it to achieve incredible results. So, if you're ready to rise up, let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Flow Over Fear and Three Things. And today I want to talk about nutrition. And I know that can be a touchy subject. It can be an emotional subject. And there's a lot of opinions and a lot of very free advice that comes out on this subject. And I just want to give a bit of a disclaimer before I start that I am not a nutritionist. I am not a doctor. I am not a medical professional, and I'm not here to give any specific advice on what you should or shouldn't eat or what nutrition protocol you should adopt. I'm just here to kind of share some of my insights and some of my experiences with nutrition and how it's evolved in my own life, as well as my experiences living with people who have, been challenged with their specific nutrition and their relationship with nutrition. It's helped me to develop some philosophies around it that may or may not be helpful. And so I want to share those because nutrition certainly plays a role in how we show up in the world and how we overcome or rise above fear and how we experience anxiety and our energy levels and all sorts of things. And if this is a topic that is in any way sensitive to you or triggers you in any way with certain behaviors, I would suggest you just skip over it, skip over this episode and come back to the next one. But if you're interested in kind of furthering the conversation around this, stick around. But one of the things, the thing I want to introduce about nutrition today, I want to introduce 3 F's. And I believe that those particular elements help us to develop a relationship with food. I think then that's really what I want to convey here is there are a lot of the diet culture that we live in right now focuses on the what. It focuses on what we should be eating, what we should be doing, the time of day that we should be eating and how to do that. We're bombarded with information on, count calories, don't count calories, eat carbohydrates, don't eat carbohydrates, practice keto, all of these different diet programs that say we're going to help you lose weight, which in and of itself gets down to why, when our primary goal is to lose weight, what is our purpose behind that? That's kind of a scary indicator that our first metric for how we know we're healthy is by how much gravitational force, pulls us down towards the earth. It's a weird dynamic that particular indicator is the most important measure of health to some. While a lot of people, there's the element of weight may not be an issue for them, and yet their mental health, they might not be mentally healthy, or they still may not be physically healthy. They may be doing things to get to that point that are unhealthy. When it comes to nutrition, there are a number of epidemics in the world. There is there's the epidemic that we hear about, obesity, which, is one epidemic that we see related to that. But there's also a more silent epidemic that I think is growing in number, and it's becoming increasingly scary. And that is the eating disorder epidemic. That is the epidemic of people not getting enough nutrition and deliberately restricting their diet. That particular element is reinforced in our culture, and it's frightening, in my opinion. We see things like, and I'm not going to, I'm not here to shame any particular diet program. The point is that, things like keto, things like intermittent fasting, things like calorie counting, maybe they have their place in certain parts of our world. I think that's why we have to be intentional about it. But when we just have this broad perspective of trying to fit a one size fits all category of how to take an approach to nutrition to everybody, like saying keto is going to work for everybody, or calorie counting is going to work for everybody, or veganism is going to work for everybody, or that kind of thing, that becomes problematic, because it leads to that restrictive eating. It leads to us, when it doesn't work for us, it leads to us feeling shame. It leads to us feeling like we are not doing enough, and feeling guilty around something that we should feel immense amount of pleasure, food. I mean, throughout human history, food has been a source of celebration for us. We've all feasted around dinner tables. We've feasted to celebrate victories, or feasted to celebrate wondrous occasions. That's something that, we should continue to embrace. But there's this sense of shame that's starting to exist around a lot of that food, and that's that does cause a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety in our circles. But I think that instead of thinking about the what, like the diet and what we should be eating and all that kind of stuff, I really think that the first, just like everything else, like any other goal, we should be thinking about the why. That we should be considering our relationship with food, with nutrition, not just what we're doing because we want to look good on Instagram, or we see somebody else and we feel shame about the way we look. It's about developing a healthy relationship with food, rather than seeing what we're eating as something bad. I think the problem is that when we look at things like diet programs, like what we just talked about, we see them and we see them work for some people. And if it doesn't work for us, or we don't like it, then everything works and nothing works. And we think that those things work or they don't work. And then we just start to see every piece of food that we put in our mouth as something that's not good, that's bad. Either it's bad for us because it's full of ingredients that aren't good for us, or it's bad tasting because it's kale and it tastes like cardboard. I mean, there's no good relationship there. It's all dysfunctional. And so the pain that helps us fall into like this vicious cycle of guilt, demoralization, low energy, etc. And of course it does, because we're not getting the right amount of fuel. And so when we're looking at a healthy relationship with nutrition, and this is an oversimplification, by the way, and I want to make sure that that's understood, is there's a lot of detail that goes into this. And if you're really, really struggling with this, there's help out there. And I suggest that you get that help, because again, going back to community, that's the best way for us to surround ourselves, is through an empowering community that will help us through that. So if you're struggling, find that. But very simply put, I think that when it comes to nutrition, it's not about the keto. It's not about the restriction. It's not about the calorie counting. It's not about, vegetables versus fruits and all this kind of stuff. What it's about are 3 F's. There's three F's that go into our relationship with nutrition. The first is fuel. Food in and of itself is a source of fuel for humans. And we have to remember that first and foremost. If you're going to drive a car out into the desert or any distance, you're going to need fuel. You're going to need that. You can't simply just say, I'm going to run on fumes and hope that works. No, you have to keep fueling your body, your vehicle. And you can certainly look at the quality of the fuel that you're putting in, but ultimately the first thing that it takes is that you are fueling your body with something. That's the only way that you're going to get energy. You can't get around that. And all too often, I see that that's the first thing that gets restricted, even with things like Ironman athletes. I remember when I was competing in Ironman, one of the first places that I failed was that I wasn't getting enough energy. I wasn't getting enough nutrition. I bought into this philosophy that I needed to not only train for 3 hours a day, but I also needed to restrict the number of calories I got in. And that was a dangerous combination. Yeah, it led to me losing weight. Of course it did. But you know what else it led to? Lack of energy, frustration, anxiety. It wasn't healthy. It wasn't until I actually started building up my calorie intake and my nutrition intake and fueling my body that I started to perform at a higher level. It's a danger indicator when I see people using restrictive diets in endurance competition and things like that. It's not a healthy combination, in my opinion. And the second F that we need to look at for a healthy relationship with food is function. What function is that food serving for us? And by the way, function can include joy. So put that on the list. That's an important one. And I think that goes at the top of the list a lot of times. Now the important thing that we realize there is that we are looking at function as multifaceted, meaning that we not just do it for the joy of it, not just do it because it feeds our sense of immediate gratification, but also that we're filling the cup of, well, is this going to give me the right nutrients that I need? Is this going to get me the right vitamins? Is this going to get me the right type of macronutrients that I need? Am I going to get? And so understanding that helps you to build a more well-rounded, well-balanced relationship with nutrition. It'll help you to develop the right kind of energy. And so looking at that, you're not looking at it the way the diet culture wants us to look at it. And the way the diet culture wants us to look at it is that, it wants us to be restrictive. It wants us to follow this simple formula for, restricting these things, because of course you're going to lose weight when you take out an entire macronutrient from your diet. Of course you are. Is it healthy? I don't know. I mean, maybe for some, but definitely not for all. The point is that you know what the function of each piece of food serves. And that helps us to develop what I would call an abundant relationship with food. Think about that for a moment. Instead of thinking of a restrictive relationship with food in which every piece of food that we get is bad, either because it's bad for us or it tastes bad, right? Think if you switch the narrative on your nutrition to something that I have an abundant relationship with food. Think of the abundance we have. Look at the world we live in where we can just go to a grocery store and pick up anything we want, put it on our shelf, and eat it at any time. For most of us, that's a reality. And if we can look at our relationship with food as an abundant relationship with food, where, if we want to eat for joy, we can eat for joy. If we want to eat for immediate gratification, we can eat for immediate gratification. If we want to eat for the nutritious value of the kale, we can do that. And we're intentional about it. Well, then we're not just reacting by getting on a diet and falling off and feeling shame and things like that. We can be intentional. We can really look at it, and everything like that turns into food for function. And then the final piece is also very important, because it gets back to the idea of when we celebrate, when we feast, when we enjoy ourselves, when we're with the community, it's food for feel. It's the emotion that we feel around it. And of course, this too can be dangerous because our feelings of anxiety, of fear, and things like that can also lead us down the path of thinking that food is bad or anything like that, or putting labels on it. But in reality, if we're just looking at it as what is the emotion this is giving me, and if we combine that with the function part of it, then we are starting to, again, we're reinforcing that abundant relationship with our nutrition. So it's I think it's important that we look at nutrition not as a way as a way of trying to monitor our calorie intake or doing things like that, or looking at it as something shameful, that we look at it as something abundant. What if we were to look at our nutrition as something that was an abundantly healthy way to look at nutrition? I like the way Michael Pollan talks about nutrition, and this fact that he puts it very simply. And I'm going to add a little extra piece after it because I think he missed a part. But he says that, in terms of building a healthy relationship with food, it goes something like this: eat food, mostly plants, not too much. And I'll add, not too little, because there's an epidemic of eating too little nowadays. So if we can practice these 3 F's, within our lives, and it doesn't have to be perfect, and we just don't feel shame, we don't feel any remorse or guilt about it. We simply look at our relationship with nutrition as it exists as fuel for function and for feel. Then that's a good start to developing a healthy and abundant relationship with food. And from that, we can get greater energy, maybe less anxiety. Maybe we can find our sweet spot of where our nutrition works, and we can just experience more joy in life, and we can bring this celebration back to the feast. Thanks for joining me today. We'll catch you next time. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to the Flow Over Fear podcast. If you'd like to learn more about getting into flow and learn the foundations of flow, I have a free video series on my website at www.adamcliffordhill.com called The Foundations of Flow. Feel free to go there and download it and start your journey to rising above fear and achieving greater flow in your life. And if you like this episode, and I'm guessing you did if you stuck around for this long, then please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button, and you will receive notifications when I have new interviews, new recaps, and new trainings that pop up on YouTube. Thanks again for joining us.